Haunted Ohio by Chris Woodyard. Vol.1, Chap.8. A Ghost Around the House. Household Hauntings. The dead had no houses of their own. They might go every Saturday and visit the house where their widow or widower still lived with their children. They might temporarily occupy their old bedroom. The word haunt comes from the Germanic word which means to fetch home. Some people get so attached to a house or piece of property that they just can't bear to leave, even when evicted by death. The Spectral Schoolteacher. Linda Pierce and her husband fell in love with the house in Kettering at first sight. A charming white 1.5-story with a big window. It was surrounded by beautiful shrubs and shaded by a large oak tree. It had been advertised as a rental, but the Pierces learned that it was part of the estate of Miss Smith, an old maid schoolteacher who had taught at the old Dorothy Lane School. The house seemed perfect in every way, except one. "We had small children," said Linda. "And my husband would take them out a couple of nights a week so I could have some time off. It seemed that every time Linda was alone in the house, funny things happened. One of these was the lights. They would flicker briefly or sometimes go dark for several minutes. Either was frightening. Linda worried that there was a dangerous sort of wiring that might cause a fire, so Dayton Power and Light sent out some repairmen to check things out. Not only was the wiring fine, DP&L couldn't find any reasons the light should be misbehaving." Her husband scoffed at her fears, until the lights went out when he was home. The lights malfunctioned for about 6 months. Then Linda happened to watch the Phil Dauphine show. The topic was psychic phenomenon. A light dawned about why the lights went off. "I might have a ghost," Linda thought, startled. The idea frightened her, but after listening to the show, I thought it might be a real possibility that we had something like that going on. Linda kept her suspicions to herself, of course. After all, she told herself, the flickering lights didn't really hurt anything, and they always came back on. Linda did a little sleuthing. She had assumed that Miss Smith had died in a hospital, but found out that the woman had actually died in the back bedroom where her youngest daughter slept. Clue number 1. A ghost often haunts the site of his or her death. Then Linda actually saw Miss Smith. "I was awakened one night. I don't know why exactly. I sat up and looked into the hallway. I didn't see a face, but I saw the form of a woman. Tall, large figure floating several inches off the floor in the hallway. The figure moved quickly from the back bedroom towards Linda's room. It looked foggy and seemed to have short, cropped brown hair, just to the ear. Somehow Linda was not frightened, but laid back down. When she sat up again, the figure was gone. Linda woke her husband. Annoyed, he told her to go back to sleep, certain that there was nothing there. But Linda was positive that she had seen a figure. The next morning, she sat in the bed to confirm that she really could have seen out the door at the angle and at that distance. From her bed to the door was only 10 or 15 feet. After thinking about her strange experience, she went over to the neighbors. "Allison," I said to my neighbor, "I want to describe to you what I think Miss Smith looked like." When I got to the short, cropped brown hair, Allison exclaimed, "That's exactly what Miss Smith looked like." She wanted to know if I had found a photograph or something. I said, "No, but I think I saw her at the house last night." After that, all manifestations ceased. Linda thinks she knows why. I found out that the house had been Miss Smith's pride and joy, the only thing she cared for in this world. Clue number 2. A ghost often wants to stay in a place it has loved very much. It's almost like she was coming around to look us over, Linda says, to see that we were the right kind of people to take care of her house. The night I saw her, I think I felt something like, I want people to love this house, which was possibly a projection from me. I wanted this woman to know that we were going to take care of her house and how much we loved it. I didn't really know how to relay this to her, but she seemed to have gotten the message. The ghostly interior decorator. Sitting in its charming Victorian garden at 586 E Town Street in Columbus is Chelton House, a handsome Greek revival mansion, living museum, and quite possibly a haven for the dead. Built in 1852 by Fernando Cortez Kelton, the house was occupied by its descendants until 1975, when Fernando's granddaughter, Grace Bird Kelton, died on Christmas Eve. Miss Kelton, a nationally known interior decorator, kept the interior much as it was in Fernando's day. Today, Kelton House brings to Grace life a Civil War-era home. Run by the Junior League, the house is available for tours, meetings, weddings, and receptions. It is said that Miss Kelton still keeps an eye on her beloved home, to the extent of rearranging the furniture and leaving out cleaning supplies when unhappy with decorating plans for the house. Footsteps have been heard in the attic by staff who were alone in the building, and a tour guide noticed a woman stray away from her group. She followed the woman into one of the museum rooms from which there was no other exit, only to find that the woman had disappeared. One of 2 full-time office workers notes that things in the office are always being misplaced and turning up in the oddest places, and we've had file cabinets become mysteriously locked. Since there are only 2 workers, she notes, some of the incidents are difficult to explain. Overall, though, they feel that the ghost is a friendly one. One woman who helped restore Kelton House believed that the house was haunted by the ghost of Fernando Kelton, who died there after he was injured in a fall from his office window. During Christmas week 1978, she reports, I heard the door being slammed 4 times and the furniture being dragged. I also heard some faraway rumbling in the attic. Since all this took place during Christmas week, near the anniversary of Grace Bird Kelton's death, one wonders if the ghost wasn't Miss Kelton, redecorating for the holidays. Carrie Ann carries on. Being more sensitive than most people, psychic Mickey Adams realizes she had a ghost almost as soon as she moved in to her 1850s-era Yellow Springs house in 1986. I saw her in the living room, looking at the window. She was very wistful and sad. I somehow knew that this was because she was sickly and she couldn't get out. Mickey sighs empathetically. She wanted to go out so much. The apparition was a slight, hollow-cheeked young woman who looked like she was in her mid-20s. She wore gray and brown 1920s clothing, and her brown hair was cut medium short. Like her mother bobbed her hair, says Mickey. She'd tensed up when she saw me, and I felt like she was afraid of me. I said out loud, "Don't be afraid." I wanted her to know that I wasn't going to try to get rid of her, that we could coexist. How much space could a spirit take up anyways? After Mickey talked to her, the apparition went away, but she saw the young woman periodically after that, and the spirit told Mickey about herself. She told me her name was Carrie Ann. She was very close to her father, which touched me because I was also close to mine. She couldn't go out because she was sickly. I felt that she had tuberculosis. She certainly looked like she did, but she could have had allergies. This area is still called Sinus Valley. Whenever her father left the house, he would always say to her, "Carry on, Carrie Ann." Without knowing the story, and a visiting friend told Mickey, "There was someone standing behind you the whole time we were talking." Mickey fired off a battery of questions, male or female, fat or thin, young or old. The answers all fit what Mickey had perceived. Feeling a little bit like they're going to lock me up, Mickey wanted to see if there was any earthly proof of Carrie Ann's existence. She visited the Seneca Library Greene County's room, which specializes in local history. There were 2 Carries who lived on Seneca Avenue in Yellow Springs. Unfortunately, the 1910 census didn't give house numbers, so I couldn't tell where on Seneca Avenue they were. But one was too old and married and had kids. The other Carrie had not married and was 14 in 1910, which would make her just about 24 or 25 if she were alive in the 1920s. According to the census, Carrie Ann's middle initial was F, so how could she be called Carrie Ann, Mickey wondered. Julia Overton, genealogy specialist in the Greene County room, and an expert on names, says that Ann was often a diminutive of Francis. "I didn't know about that," says Mickey, impressed by Overton's expertise, "but I wouldn't argue with Julie." After Mickey's research, Carrie Ann's visits diminished. Mickey knows that Carrie Ann is still around, but I don't see a whole lot of her. I do feel that she's comfortable and still carrying on beyond death. "Yes, Screamy Kitten, you is needy. I understand." The room with no door. The ghost in Matt Goler's house was basically a friendly one. In fact, she had only one flaw. She kept getting him in trouble with his dad. For years and years, my father used to get me up in the morning and say, "Matt, you left the damn light on in the cabin room again." Matt, a production manager at Dayton's Who I Am, chuckles as he remembers trying to convince his father he hadn't. And over and over he'd say, "I left the light on," and I'd say, "Dad, I didn't. I'm telling you, I didn't leave the light on," and we'd get into it. We went back and forth a million times. The cabin room was an unusual feature of their Oakwood mansion, built by a predominant Dayton family in the 1920s, designed to make the owners feel like they were in a hunting lodge. The cabin room looked just like the inside of a cabin, with log walls and a huge beamed ceiling. The walls were covered with the heads of moose and other hunting trophies. There was also a large chandelier made out of deer antlers, the chandelier that Matt's father accused him of leaving on. One day, Matt had finally vacated. He was watching TV with his younger brothers in the cabin room. One day, Matt had finally vindicated. Matt was finally vindicated. He was watching TV with his 2 younger brothers in the cabin room with the lights off. Then, I have no idea why, but somehow that light came on by itself, without the switch thrown, and the TV went off too. Now, one day, Matt was finally vindicated. He was watching TV with his 2 younger brothers in the cabin room with the lights off. Then, I have no idea why, but somehow that light came on by itself, without the switch being thrown, and the TV went off too, despite the fact that the same thing happened on 2 different occasions when his brothers were there to witness it. His father never really apologized and is still a little skeptical about the whole thing. Could it have been an electrical quirk? Matt doesn't think so. At the same time this happened, we'd just put the house up for sale. An electrical inspection was done and everything was okay. Matt always chalked up the disturbances to our friendly pal Edna, as he and his family called the house ghost. She was never nasty to us. We called her Edna because we got a box full of keys when we bought the house. All of the keys were labeled with kids' names. Doug's room, Sissy's room, like that. We accounted for all the keys except for one marked Edna's room. We never found the door that it fit. An odd key, and to match, the house had a room with no door. A window is visible from the outside, but inside there is no way into the room. Peering through the window, all that can be seen, Matt says, is just darkness, a black wall. It's a chilling suggestion of the darkness of the grave. Perhaps long ago, Edna was sent to her room and has never left it. Final harvest. Next to his farm and his wife, the old Miami County farmer loved his white cat. That cat could do no wrong, and the farmer insisted that the big barn door always be left open a crack so the cat could come in and go as it pleased. The old farmer died at harvest time, a fitting time to be gathered to his rest. Death or not, the crop still had to be brought in, so Will, the old man's son, rented out the farm to George Crooks, who cut and stacked the bales of hay in the barn. The white cat wandered in and out, hunting field mice and grasshoppers. Since George didn't live on the property, Will asked him to lock the barn up at night. The barn door was a heavy steel one that slid on a track, almost too heavy for one man to manage alone. It locked with a turn bolt and a padlock and should have been secure. But Will noticed that while George was kind to the white cat, he always seemed to forget to lock the barn. George insisted that his very last act every night was to lock the barn. Still, every morning the big steel door was found open, just a crack. Tramps, thieves, or vagrants. That was the only explanation Will could think of. George swore that no one could get in after he locked up, and pointed out that none of the expensive equipment in the barn had been taken. George got rather touchy about it, so the following year Will rented the farm to Adam, a young man who had no patience with any suggestion of the supernatural. The white cat was included in the deal. One evening when he was outside, Adam heard a scraping sound. He turned around just in time to see the barn door sliding open. The other occasion, the young man had secured all the doors and was walking away when the white cat got under his feet. He spun around to keep his balance and saw that the hasp he had just locked was swinging back and forth, open. In a panic, he told Will what had happened. At last, Will realized that in all the years of his father's life, the barn had never been locked. Perhaps locking the barn had somehow upset his father, offended his ideas of trust. Or maybe he was just looking out for his cat. One day, the white cat was found dead. After that, the sliding barn door stayed closed, so long as Will didn't lock it. A few years later, Will sold off the property. He was careful to tell the new people about the door. They took the matter quite seriously. At first, they said, they noticed a tension in the barn, but after the animals were stabled there, the old man seemed to be happy and content. And they are careful to never lock the barn. The Small Ghost of Middletown. Susie Garon speaks apologetically about their ghost. We have a small ghost. She sounds regretful that she can't tell me about any indelible blood stains or clanking chains. Nothing major has happened, she said. Just a lot of little things that my husband and I can't account for in any other way. Their Middletown house is a handsome Queen Anne painted in the original colors, yellow with green and white trim. Built in 1903, the house remained in the same family until the 1950s. Houses of this age have seen many births and deaths. Susan believes that there is a small ghost that has been here for a long time. She has never seen it, but Hoover, their cat, has. Hoover is very high-strung, and he acts very strange sometimes. In the master bedroom, he's actually walked backwards while his fur puffed out so he had twice his normal size. I've seen him defiantly staring at something invisible. At those times, Susan has felt a presence. She believes that the presence is a child, a boy, although she doesn't know exactly why she thinks this, except that the manifestations have seemed prankish. Her research has uncovered that at least one little boy has died in this house. Some of the occurrences certainly suggest a childish sense of humor. We got a new address book, and we put it in the drawer, the same place we'd always kept it. One day Dan went to use it. "Gee, where's the address book?" he asked. They emptied the drawer and searched for several hours. And then several days, thankful that they hadn't thrown the old address book away. After 5 days, one morning we came down, and there it was in the middle of the kitchen table. "I know we didn't eat on top of it for 4 days," Susan says firmly. Another time, Susan missed a camisole. She asked Dan if he'd seen it. Naturally, he hadn't, and he joked, "I'm not wearing it." Because bedroom closet space is limited, Susan kept her room in the other bedroom closet. A few mornings later, she walked into the room and found the camisole carefully spread out on the floor. I didn't walk on it for those days either. One of her husband's ghostly aggravations is his little feud with the light in the attic. The entrance to the attic is fashioned and rather stiff. The entrance to the attic is through a closet, and the attic light turns on with an old-fashioned and rather stiff turn knob. Says Susan, he'll open the closet and door one morning, look up and see the light is on. He'll turn it off and come home from work and he finds the light back on. This goes on for several days, and then it stops until the next time, a couple months later. Susan has experienced another annoying manifestation. On Tuesdays, I used to work a half day, then I'd come home and do some housework. On the mantel in the parlor, I had set a set of Hinesley candlesticks that had belonged to my mother, and a few other knickknacks. About 6 months after we moved in, I came into dust, and the things on the mantel were rearranged. And not in a very attractive manner either. I thought to myself, I can't believe Dan would do this. And I put them back the way that I wanted them. The next Tuesday and the next, it happened again. Finally, I said to Dan, "Do you really think this is so attractive?" Of course, he hadn't moved anything. One Tuesday, I had a really bad day at work. I came home to find that the mantel was rearranged again, and one of my Hinesley candlesticks was balanced precariously, half on and half off the mantel. I yelled out, "I can't believe you would do a thing like this. These candlesticks mean a lot to me. They could have been broken. Just knock it off." Then I started to storm out of the room, and the candle came flying by my head. I guess the ghost didn't appreciate being yelled at, but the mantel hasn't been rearranged since. Susie breaks off her story to apologize again. I'm afraid these aren't very exciting stories. They're just small things that we can't really explain. Small and inexplicable. Not like they're very busy, small ghost. Nah. Small and inexplicable. Not unlike their very busy, small ghost. The ghost followed him home. Roger Killen Spencer of Beaver Creek at Dayton suburb had seen entities from time to time when he was a child. But when he was 17, a session with a Ouija board conjured up an obsessive spirit who followed him home. The first time I talked to the spirit, my girlfriend and I had been using the Ouija board, which I do not recommend anybody using, he said empathetically. They set up the board at a playground behind an elementary school in Beaver Creek. First they talked to a male spirit who was coming across very faintly. In mid-sentence, he could tell that something stronger was taking over. She spelled out her name. Geezel, pronounced Giselle, like the ballet character Giselle, who was captured by the spirits of the dead. I asked her why she was talking to us. She said she had been following me. When I asked her why, she said at first that it was like a magnetic pull, and then she claimed that we were interested in similar things. Uneasy about these messages, Killen Spencer stopped using the board. Then Giselle showed up at his house. I was going upstairs. I looked up and she was standing there on top of the stairs. I can't say that I was actually afraid because I'm used to seeing unexplainable things. I immediately knew who it was. Our dog, who was with me, was curious about her. He just sat there, ears cocked forward, looking at her without barking. I was surprised when I saw her. I had always felt safe in my house because between my mother, who was a very determined woman, and myself, it would be difficult for anything malignant to get in. Speaking telepathically, I told the spirit to go away. Okay, I said, you've proven your point. You're in the house. I don't want to deal with you right now. She didn't say anything, just faded out. Killen Spencer continued up the stairs to his room. I probably walked through her. I felt a definite cold spot. I went to my room and felt certain that she couldn't get into it. My room is my sanctuary, he explained. Kind of a bastion against whatever. If I can't be safe there, I'm up a creek. After that first appearance, Giselle haunted the hall outside of Killen Spencer's room. She was in her mid-40s, about 5 foot 6 inches, and well-proportioned for her height. I would say she was quite attractive. She had light-colored hair, ash blonde or white, I could never really tell which. She was always transparent. I could see the wall behind her, she liked wearing lacy things, antique lace. All of her clothes seemed to be either white or gray and in form-fitting late Victorian, early Edwardian style with long skirts. I got the feeling that her clothes would have been racy at the time. Once she wore a cameo brooch that had her own profile carved on it. She usually wore her hair loose on her shoulders. I only saw it up in a bun once. She had a widow's peak. Her face was remarkable, with very unusual steel-gray eyes. I remember the eyes particularly because of an evening when she brought someone else with her. That night she was at her strongest, and she stood very close, about a foot from me. The gentleman she brought with her was about 5 foot 10 inches, not much taller than her. He had a very nondescript round face, a stocky barrel body. He wore simple clothes, a button-up shirt, trousers, no hat. He was balding a little, with darker hair than hers, and a mustache. He had a different kind of air. He was the one I was worried about. I never did find out what their connection was. Giselle never stayed very long, about an hour at the most, but Killen Spencer often got migraines after speaking to her telepathically because of the intense concentration involved. Off and on I had dreams where she would speak to me. She didn't say anything memorable, we just talked about her and why she was there. She said she was attracted to my energy. I think that as time went on, her fascination with me became more obsessive, and it became more of a game to see if she could get into my room or catch me off guard. I often got very angry with her. I'm very protective of my sister, and she sometimes insinuated that she would move out of the hall and into my sister's room and show herself to my sister. At those times I would sit down and say, "Fine, we'll talk." She knew this was an effective tactic to get me to talk to her. She also tried to pressure me into using the Ouija board alone. I wasn't that stupid. Gradually, her games became more petty and I lost patience. At first, I didn't feel any bad intentions from her, but I think that she became frustrated and that began to sour her. I demanded that she leave me alone. I threatened to do nasty things like kick her out of the house. Actually, I was just bluffing. Giselle didn't know how much I could really do, which was to my advantage. I conned her until one night when I again used the Ouija board in the house, because she was really starting to bug me. My best friend and my girlfriend pooled the things we knew, and together, between the three of us, we could kind of gang up on her. The board session didn't go very smoothly because I lost my temper, to the chagrin of both of my friends. I was to the point where I wasn't bluffing anymore. Something told me that I had the energy to get rid of her. I was just sick of the whole thing. Giselle said goodbye in a hurry. My friends went home. That night I was doing some meditation as I came out of the meditation before sleep, I saw Giselle and the other gentleman standing at the foot of my bed. She was at her strongest. What bothered me the most was that they were actually in my room without alerting me. I think if I hadn't been in a trance, they wouldn't have gotten in. I was mad. I did something called expanding auras, where you turn your aura from a natural mental defense into an offensive mechanism and extend your physical presence. They were forced outside of the room on whatever semi-plane they're on. I calmed myself down a bit. But the gentleman came back into my room very easily. I got so upset that I don't really remember exactly what I did. I think I did the same thing, only 3 or 4 times stronger. I could feel that it worked. He was gone. But I could still see Giselle out in the hall. At that point, I asked her to come back into my room so we could discuss this. I didn't worry about her being stronger than me anymore. I knew she couldn't defeat me. I put a hex on her. It stuck her out in the hallway and it kept her there. After that, I never felt her energy as strongly as at first. I last saw her late in July of 1989. The family moved from the house in the spring of 1991. Kellen Spencer recently walked by the house. It struck me that she's still there. She can't move. She's tied to the house. But the hex isn't everlasting. I don't think. It was made in the heat of a moment. If I were to undo the hex now, would she get angry at the house? Would she get angry at me or follow me? I don't know. The Ghost in Possession. Galen Finley, owner of the haunted McDonaldsville Opera House, also owns a haunted house. It was built in 1843 for Frances Gage, a figure in the women's rights movement, who hosted Susan B. Anthony at the house. As a young man, Finley did odd jobs for William Bash, the owner of the 11-room house. After Bash died, his daughter sold the house to Finley, along with the furniture, the paintings, and the grand piano, because she couldn't bear to see the furnishings sold separately. Her father had loved the house, and she knew Finley would too, but Bash was reluctant to relinquish possession. "When I moved in," says Finley, "anyone else could go out in the hall and nothing would happen. But when I'd appear in the hall, or even near it, the closet door under the stairs would open every time. Finally, one night, I started up the steps and the door opened. My mother and another friend were washing the windows on the front door. When this happened, Mother turned around and addressed the old man who had owned the house. 'William Bash! Now, William, enough is enough. My son is restoring your house back to its original grandeur, and you should be thrilled to pieces to see it pieces and sit back and enjoy yourself, because your home is going to be back as it was in your heyday when you were a wealthy man. Leave my son alone.' William chuckles as he remarks, 'Nothing happened since.'" The Ghosts of Patterson Homestead. It has been said that ghosts happen where there has been a lot of living. There has been a lot of living in Dayton's Patterson Homestead, and so it seems quite a few ghosts. Built as a farmhouse in 1816 by Cole Robert Patterson, Dayton's Patterson Homestead is a handsome 3-story Federal-style brick building, restored as a family home of the late 1816s to 1868 era. Antiques and family memorabilia are displayed on the first 2 floors with this graceful staircase and tall windows. The 3rd floor, which is not available to the public, still has the remnants of family apartments. Trees and bushes set off the full beauty of the house, which overlooks a sweeping lawn of Brown Street. Festivals, speakers, and towns and tours keep the house lively. Early in 1989, Kirby Turner, the director of the Montgomery County Historical Society, was working in the basement while a women's group held a meeting in the auditorium. Turner heard heavy footsteps on the stairs behind him. Thinking in irritation that he'd have to shoo the intruders away, he whirled, and there was nobody there. "There was no question in my mind that there had been somebody on the stairs," he said. Right away, he went up the stairs to check the kitchen with negative results. He even walked over to the meeting room to ask if anyone had strayed into the basement. Negative again. Says Turner, "It took me a while before it hit me that it was not something natural." He recollects that the footsteps were heavy ones, like a man wearing boots, and he is certain he heard them. On a cold April Sunday in 1989, a volunteer named Danielle found herself trapped by a mysteriously jammed door. She had just finished a tour and had gone to the kitchen for a cup of tea before their next group She had just finished a tour and had gone to the kitchen for a cup of tea before her next group, when the door into the kitchen slammed violently. Thinking that a breeze had caught the door, she pushed and pushed on it, but found that it was completely jammed. She heard her tour party knocking on the front door. "Oh no," thought Danielle. "I'll have to go out the back of the kitchen door and around the front to let them in." At that, a door leading from the adjoining pantry into the dining room slowly swung open. Danielle was baffled. The door to the dining room had been kept locked as long as she had been there. It took 2 people to unstick the jammed door in the hall. Another mysterious breeze arose when Miss Dorothy Patterson visited the house. She walked through the front hall. A strong wind came out of the parlor on the left, as if someone were breezing by. One of the most puzzling incidents concerned some gingerbread men, Christmas decorations, which had been dipped in a foul-smelling formalin-based preservative and hung on a line in the basement to dry. The next day, Patterson manager Molly Williams went to the basement and found all but one of the cookies yanked off the rope, lying on a table beneath. At first, she suspected rats or mice had chewed through the string, but the string had been vigorously jerked off the wall, not gnawed. Molly Williams and Kirby Turner are the only persons with keys to the house, and they were mystified. Did one of the Pattersons object to the smell of the preservative, which might have remind him of embalming fluid used in the Civil War? Or did it offend some ghostly but still facetious Patterson housewife? Patterson has his own ghosts of Christmas past. During a Christmas tea, 8 people were being given a candlelight tour. On the second floor, one of them came to Miss T, the tour guide, saying, "Didn't you say we weren't supposed to go up to the 3rd floor? I just saw someone walk up those stairs." Miss T quickly counted heads and immediately rushed to the stairway. From the side, she saw the legs of a man wearing tall, polished boots ascending the stairs. As she reached the bottom of the stairs, she saw the man looking down at her from the 3rd floor. It was a man in military uniform wearing riding boots, perhaps Frank Patterson, who was killed while testing aircraft at Wright Field. And then he simply wasn't there. Patterson volunteers have smelled ghostly odors like a light flower perfume, fresh-baked cookies, and boiling green beans in the empty kitchen. When I toured the house, I felt someone on the entire 3rd floor, one of the 2nd floor bedrooms, and in the basement. Psychic Mickey Adams felt an intense sadness in the front bedroom, a woman rocking her sick child. Medium Kathleen Cook saw a man at the desk in the front room downstairs. He was just sitting there watching everyone. I didn't ask him anything. She felt spirits in the other rooms and heard children laughing and playing. Many volunteers have experienced the feeling of a presence. A benign presence, thinks Kirby Turner, like they are watching over the house, interested in what's going on. Manager Molly Williams, who has been so effective in making the house a popular attraction, says that people used to complain about Patterson Homestead being too cold. Now they say the house feels much warmer, as if a ghostly someone approves.